In the meantime, members of the House of Representatives appear to be more conciliatory towards the host communities when they approved a 5% trust fund for them rather than the 3% which the Senate arrived at. The lower chamber of the National Assembly skipped certain parliamentary procedures in facilitating progress in bringing this bill forward, apparently in disregard of the protestations of members of the opposition. And joining us now from our Rise Abuja studio to give greater clarification on this is Honorable Sergius Ogun, a member of the People's Democratic Party representing Isan Northeast and Isan Southeast Federal Constituency in Edo State. Good to have you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Now, Senator, now that the petroleum industry bill has been passed without proper synergy between the Senate and the House of Representatives, what would you expect to happen when it comes to the harmonization stage, when the Joint Committee begins to act?
Well, like you have said, I mentioned in your report, there will be a conference to harmonize the differences and that should take care of it. But I strongly believe that the 5% passed by the House will prevail. 5% is not too much for the host communities. Like Senator Sekibo said there, you have passed a bill that's for everyone in the country, but you also need an environment where that bill can thrive. So I think that's going to be taken care of. It's not a problem.
Well, there are some other areas that remain contentious as ever, such as the influence of the petroleum minister. Some industry watchers have said the petroleum minister still maintains a significant control in the PIB if passed.
Well, I don't think so. The powers of the minister has greatly whittled down in this bill. I mean, you can't compare this to the bill of that was presented to the House in the 7th House, you know, when almost all the powers in the industry went to the minister then Alison Diziani, you know. But now, if you look at, I think, Section 71, Sub 1 of the bill passed by the House, is the upstream commission that is actually awarding licenses, you know, prospecting licenses. We just finished the bid round for marginal fields. And the minister was the one calling the shots, you know, with DPR under him. But right now, that power goes straight to the upstream commission. So the minister will still remain the chief accounting officer of the new NNPC Limited. But I mean, he should give direction, basically. And that's the work of ministers, at least in this present-day government. They give direction. You know, ministers don't sign checks. Ministers don't award contracts. They just give direction. The rest is done by the civil service or by the bureaucracy.
Even when the minister doubles as the president and there is a time constraint?
Well, I don't think going forward with this bill, we will still have what is happening right now, because the NNPC of today is just a corporation, you know, like an enterprise under the government, a corporation under the government. But with a CAMA registered NNPC Limited, it's going to be a commercial entity. So that going forward will not happen.
Okay, please speak more, since you started going in that direction, speak more to the reformed role of NNPC. We heard from the report earlier that NNPC will, in their current role under the bill, will no longer be serving as a regulator. Could you elaborate on that and how that will change the dynamics?
Yeah, but as you know, we have the commission, the upstream commission, and then we have the midstream and the downstream regulatory authority. So these are the bodies that will be carrying out these functions. The NNPC is going to be a strictly commercial entity. That as it stands now, I think part of what we agreed is that within the shortest possible time, they will go public. You know, and then people will be allowed to buy shares. We can model it after the NLNG. Like the president said 2 months ago, you know, spoke glowingly of the NLNG. And he even said 95 or 99% of the workforce are Nigerians. And yet they are doing extremely well. So what we are saying today, the same investors there, because NLNG as it stands today is investor driven. The board is largely investors because they have majority shares in the company. So even today, we will have an NHPC that you have Minister of Finance and Minister of Petroleum Resources holding the federal government shares there, but within the shortest possible time, because now we have a new company. You have to know the assets and all, you know. So by the time you put all that together and the coast is clear, our submission is that they will go public, and then we will allow investors to call the shots. So when all that is happening, I don't think most of these things happening in NNPC today will change, because the biggest problem NNPC has today is government and nothing else, and that has been taken out of the way.
Okay, help us even set that in context with regards to the fact that NNPC had declared that they would acquire a certain stakehold in the Dangote refinery. How does that play towards this new public role that you envisage them having?
Yes, because now that's what we are talking about. It's going to be a business venture. It's no longer a government corporation, because now they are even going to borrow the money, which they're going to invest in Dangote. What that does for the government, for NNPC rather, is that they will spread their risk, one, and then secondly, there are learnings they will take from the private entities where they are investing and bring into NNPC. And then for the private sector, for Dangote or any other modular refinery or refinery that's coming out in Nigeria, they will also get that money, and they also get that assurance that NNPC being on the board or being a shareholder can sort of guarantee certain things, you know, availability of crude oil and at least a bit of government, if you call it that.
Okay, and also provide clarity in this area, Honorable Ogun. With the introduction of this PIB, a company shall not be involved in more than one stream of the petroleum operation and would have to register a separate company for each stream of petroleum operations. Some analysts have said, would this not complicate things for operations in the sector? I mean, when you have to register more than one company, if you have to do multiple operations, either in the upstream, midstream, or downstream. What's the sense behind this?
Well, I don't know whether I really understand that, but I think we take our mind back to the fact that NNPC is no longer government now, going forward. It's a commercial entity. So there's going to be transparency in anything they do. It's like I give you an example of Shell Petroleum in Nigeria. They have the SPDC, the Shell Petroleum Development Company. Then you have the Shell Gas. Then you have the Shell, the SNEPCO, the offshore company, you know. So why can't NNPC run like that? If they want to go into a certain area of business, register that business. Let it be a subsidiary, which I think was happening before.
Okay, let's do an overview of the gains of this bill and possibly go back to the issue, the two issues that come to mind that could present as a thorn in the side of this bill. So, for example, you talked about the host communities and you said that would be easily cleared up. But help us understand what the considerations were that made the House of Representatives vote for a higher percentage than the House of Senate. And then the issue of the international oil companies. They had initially made some complaints about the fact that they felt it wasn't as competitive for them under this bill. But we heard the House leader say that it presented a more clement environment for them. Help us understand where that clemency comes from, and also with regards to the host communities, the considerations.
Well, we had suggested 10% previously when we went to Lagos for the retreat. The South-South caucus met and said, look, let's leave it at 5%. And then that was agreed when we were considering the gray areas that remained, basically. You know, and again, he's saying this, I want to commend the Speaker of the House and the leadership of the House, and then the Minister of State for Petroleum and the Group Managing Director for NNPC. Because at any time we needed them, they were available to explain anything. And that helped. So that is why I would be surprised, or I am surprised, because it was a joint committee of the House and the Senate. Most of these issues were agreed on. And when we needed to call the executive, that's the Minister of State for Petroleum now, and the GMD, they came with their team. The GGM, NAPIMS, the Executive Secretary, PTDF, they were all there. You know, and the thing, what we said was, we're sticking with 5%, you can run the numbers. So this group, the Minister of State for Petroleum, the GMD, NNPC, and their team met with the Northern Caucus, met with the Southern Caucus, came back and met with the entire House day before yesterday. There were no issues around the 5%. So that is why I strongly believe whatever the Senate has done, I think will be corrected when the conference meets. Okay. Because even, let me just add that even the bill that came to the House, there was an error in the section 240. It was 7% that was there. And it was amended right there on the floor, you know?
Okay, so then please just speak to
we are good to go.
Speak to the fact that the leader of the House said the environment is more clement for international oil companies or oil investors.
Yeah, because when the NNPC group came and the minister, we let them know this, and I'm sure they ran the numbers and they were comfortable with that. Yeah, because at the end of the day, really, we know there's need to have an industry or have a bill that will be competitive, because there's oil basically everywhere in the world today, and even around us in Africa. And we know we have lost a lot of ground, really. And then knowing that in some few years you might not really need fossil fuel. So everyone has agreed that this bill we have to go through, and we have done what we need to do. So when he says we have a clement weather for this to go ahead, yeah, because we ran some numbers to arrive at that. And I also think if the IOCs or the oil majors are honest, they would know that if they manage the host community well, most of the issues they are having right now, because most of the challenges is subsurface. It's not on the surface, it's underground. So the cost of going down to drill oil, that's where the cost is coming from. You know, so but if you take care of these issues, knotty issues in the communities, that cost will go down drastically. That's what the host community intervention is supposed to take care of. So you take care of this, you spend less on some of the issues or some of the items you are spending money on right now. And eventually the cost of drilling or cost of production will come down.
Okay, to my earlier question, I wasn't speaking about the unbundling of the NNPC. I was speaking about some of the fiscal changes that have been made in taxation for companies. And with the PIB, it says a company would not or shall not be involved in more than one stream at a time. You have to register multiple companies to take part in multiple sectors. That's the upstream, the midstream, or the downstream. And that was what I was asking, that some analysts have said, does this not complicate issues? Why do I have to, as a large conglomerate, have to open multiple companies to just participate? I wanted to clarify on that. But let me also ask you about the 30% profits for exploration for frontier basins. No states were mentioned in particular. We'd like to know what are some of those frontier basins we are looking at, apart from the existing ones we already know.
Well, I don't know the ones you know. Let me start from the frontier.
Well, the Niger Delta, we do know, is a frontier basin.
Yeah, I guess the entire country is. You have the Calabar, then you have the Anambra, Kogi, then you have the Benue Trough, you have the Bauchi, then you have the Northeast, Komani, and even Sokoto Basin. So basically, if we are able to save some money as a government, so to speak, or an NPC, to go in and we discover that we have, one, it will boost our reserve if we can make those discoveries. And then secondly, when we discover that we have that reserve, the private sector cannot go in and invest. Because most frontiers all over the world are usually government that will go. Because why is it called frontier? It's an area where you have not established that there's oil. So when government opens it up, the private sector will not check to be sure that it's viable and they can make money from it. And then they will go in. You know, and then one, like I said, one will be it will help boost our reserves. And then secondly, it will also create access to oil, to crude oil. I'll give you an example now. We're talking about the Sokoto Basin, the Bauchi Basin, and then the Benue Trough. If we find oil in commercial quantity in these areas, do you know what that would do for us? It will mean you can actually drill these oils, build refineries there. Like the NNPC has said, they're going to to contract the pipelines to the private sector. They're going to hand that over to the private sector. The pipes are going to go deeper, and it will be managed by the private sector. So when you do that, you discover that if you have a refinery, for example, in the northeast, it's easier for them to take care of states around there. And same thing if you have in a place like even Gombe or Bauchi, it's easier to pipe it to Plateau and the surrounding states. You won't have to be trucking products from Port Harcourt or from Lagos to the eastern states. And then that will take away PEF and PPPROA to a large extent.
Okay. Let's talk about the extent to which this bill is future-proofed. You mentioned yourself that in a few years, according to our report, in 30 years' time, fossil fuels will become relatively obsolete. So to what extent does this bill touch on some of those future-proofing, conditions that we need so that we can keep up with the global market?
Yeah, that's why the emphasis is on making the bill or the industry competitive for investors. Because like the GMD will always refer to coal in Enugu right now. You know, it's an asset, but what kind of asset is it? Who is after coal today? So with what we have today, if we can harness it and make maximum gains from it to develop other parts of the economy, that would be, even now, we are in competition with renewable energy. So, but what do we have as a nation, as an asset, to prepare ourselves for that future that is not so far away? So, have a bill that will be competitive, that will allow investors to come in, take advantage of what the resources we have, tap it, and we take the money there to diversify the economy. Go into renewable energy. Even the oil companies are into renewable energy these days. So when we do that, we'll be prepared for what's going to happen in the next 30 years. Because in the next 30 years, if this is a waste asset, what do you need it for? You're not going to drink it. So the essence is to take advantage of the investment-friendly, not necessarily environment, but of the bill to tap into these assets, and then the gains the country will benefit from.
Okay, let me ask you, because talking about the future, some would say oil isn't really a matter of the future. They're talking about renewable energies, and yet we're talking about frontier basins when the world is planning to move away from oil. But secondly, a lot of these oil companies are also transforming to renewable energies. So did it occur to you in updating this piece of legislation to include fiscal responsibilities around the future of oil, renewable energy, fiscal terms?
Well, okay, what I also almost missed out on is on gas. There's a whole incentive for gas. Like you would have heard that Nigeria is actually a gas country, a gas nation. We are not so much of crude oil, but we are very comfortable with crude oil today. But this bill has also given a window for investors to come in, tap into the gas resources we have, and use it to expand. Yes, granted that the oil companies are going to renewable energy. But even in NNPC today, you have a Department of Renewable Energy. But is it well funded? I dare say they are not well funded. So if we take the reserve we have today in crude oil, if we can ramp up that reserve, because if an investor is coming in here, and we are saying, well, we have an act, we have a law that's friendly to investors. So if they know the reserve that we have, tomorrow we are going to go public. If we go public tomorrow, it's based on the reserve that we have. So knowing what we have and going to the market to sell is one thing. But we're also using this as a leverage to raise money for gas. And then because gas is also the future. And we have enough of that. That's one potential we have not tapped into. You keep hearing associated gas. Yeah, because as you are going to drill oil, it's the gas that is in the way that we are trapping right now, that we are flaring. So by the time we go into exploring for gas and then drilling gas wells, there's a whole potential that we have not even tapped. So I think we have a good bill that has created, or that will create access to these huge investments.
Okay, Honorable. I mean, lest we think that this bill is a the silver bullet, because we've waited for it for so long, are we already looking to associated bills that will help enhance that industry, or are we solely relying on the PIB to drive us or bring us out of the fog, if you like?
Well, let's start with the PIB, because as you know, the story behind the PIB, since the bill came up, the investors have been jittery. Because if you are going into an economy, if you are going to a country to invest, you will need to know your return on investment. You need to know the regulatory environment. But if you don't know this, you can't go in there and invest. So that has been the greatest undoing of this bill in the past. But now that at least we have a bill, hopefully, that will be assented to by the president, and then the investors know what is before them. So when the investment begin to come in, and that we think there's a need to make new bills to help the PIB or even amend the PIB, we'll start doing it like yesterday. I met the guys that did the PIB in Ghana. I met them some years ago during the Oil Technology Conference, OTC, in Houston. And I asked them, what was the magic? How did they deliver on that? And they said to me, they were not arrogant. Some few days to when they would present it to Parliament, so many other things came up, like environmental issues and community, but they were able to prevail on them and say, look, let's go ahead with this bill the way it is.
Okay.
And immediately the bill was passed, they started amending almost immediately.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on the bill, passage of the Petroleum Industry Bill in Nigeria, Honorable Sergius Ogun. Much appreciated.